For 1,000 days, Roman Reigns has been the WWE Universal Champion. There has not been a run like this since Hulk Hogan won his first WWF title and lost it 4 years later. Back then, there were no monthly pay-per-views. There was no live weekly television show. Hogan rarely wrestled on the syndicated shows like Superstars and Wrestling Challenge, but he was on all the big shows. And he was on the road on the house shows defending the title, right? Something Roman Reigns does not do much of anymore. They kept the titles on him at WrestleMania to pad his stats and to get him at least to 1,000 days. Obviously, he's going beyond that. How much more beyond that, we don't know. So they got what they wanted, but what we saw at Night of Champions could have been done even without Roman holding those titles. They decided it fits the story better for him to have them, even though we had a show called Night of Champions, and neither of the two top titles in the company were actually defended. This forever run that Roman has been on has had a lot of memorable moments. It's allowed us to see heel Roman Reigns at his best after being forced down our throats as a babyface for so many years. Multiple WrestleMania main events to mixed reactions and boos, right? Fighting against what was so obvious, which was the heel turn that so many people were hoping to see. Sometimes it takes one great heel turn to create your next big babyface. Had Vince McMahon turned Roman sooner, by now he probably would be the biggest babyface in the business. And he'll be a huge babyface at some point, but sometimes things have a way of working out in the end. When Roman came back in 2020, he said that he would only come back if they allowed him to do things the way that he wanted to do them, as a heel, with Paul Heyman at his side. And it was a breath of fresh air. It gave Heyman new life too after all those years with Brock Lesnar. It's been almost 3 years now with Roman Reigns, and it feels like they've been together forever. How many managers or advocates, since I know Heyman doesn't think of himself as a manager, how many of them have had multiple runs on top with multiple big stars the way that Paul Heyman has? With Brock Lesnar, and then with CM Punk, and now with Roman Reigns. All right, Bobby Heenan, Bobby Heenan would be the closest thing. You know, you had Bobby Heenan and Nick Bockwinkel in the AWA. You had Heyman with Andre for a period of time in WWE. But you know, Heenan with Rick Rude and Heenan with Andre, those were not the lengthy kind of runs that Heyman has had with Brock and with Roman. I mean, this is really something that we've never seen before. And that's the biggest thing I can say for this run that Roman has been on. When you ask, you know, well, who has he really lifted up? Who has Roman actually elevated? He's beaten everybody there is to beat, you know, damn near. Drew McIntyre missed what would have been a huge moment for him at Clash at the Castle. Sami Zayn lost to him at the Elimination Chamber. Cody Rhodes lost to him at WrestleMania. He gave Paul Heyman another lease on life. He gave Sami Zayn the biggest run of his entire career, and he's been around a long time. He was never more over as he was when he was a member of the Bloodline. He never had as much television exposure or as many main event matches as he got as part of this Bloodline story. Standing tall at the end of War Games, taking a chair to Roman's back at the end of the Royal Rumble, having an entire pay-per-view built around him in his hometown and headlining for the World Championship for the first time in his career. Main eventing WrestleMania for the first time in his life. He just headlined another show yesterday in Saudi Arabia. When Sami Zayn eventually goes into the Hall of Fame, his work in this Bloodline story, this will be his magnum opus. That does not happen without Roman Reigns. That does not happen without him playing off this tribal chief character. Kevin Owens has benefited from it too. He just headlined his second straight WrestleMania. But no one has benefited more than his cousins, the Usos. And Solo Sikoa. Solo got called up from NXT. He's been a main event player ever since because of the Bloodline. But Jimmy and Jay have been the biggest beneficiaries in all of this. Before all of this, they were a great tag team. And now they are legit main event stars. Main event Jey Uso does not exist without Roman Reigns and the Bloodline story. So for me, the length of time that he has spent as champion is not really all that impressive. It's not the most impressive part of his run. Any promoter can book somebody to hold a belt for however long they want and pad their stats as much as they want, defending the belt half a dozen times in a single year. It's what the Bloodline has done for everyone else involved and how it's elevated all of the people that I just mentioned. And the hope is that when it's over, they'll come out of it much bigger stars than they were coming into it. And whoever does end up taking those titles from Roman will eventually, hopefully, be the next big face that they can build their company around. Night of Champions was a good show. It was bookended by two excellent matches. First, Seth Rollins beating AJ Styles to become the first ever World Heavyweight Champion. I thought the new title was following the lineage of the previous big gold belt. That is not the case. This is a brand new belt with a brand new title lineage, according to WWE.com. So they've got their work cut out for them trying to portray this as anything other than a silver medal. Because as long as Roman has those other two belts, he's the top dog. Everybody knows it, and everyone else is just fighting for second place. But if Seth Rollins could have the kind of run as world champion that he had on Raw as the Intercontinental Champion 5 years ago, that's going to go a long way towards building value and prestige for this new belt. He says he's going to be on Raw this week and every week going forward. I hope so. I hope that's the case, because Raw has been without a champion for far too long. But the main event yesterday was for the undisputed tag team titles. It was Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn defending against Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. They had a hot crowd that absolutely revered Sami when he came out. This was Sami's first time in Saudi Arabia in nearly a decade. And they were all hyped up to see him. After a referee bump, the Usos, of course, who were not supposed to be there, they were there. They got involved in the main event. They tried to help, and it backfired on them. They went for a double super kick to Sami Zayn. He moved out of the way, and they accidentally kicked Solo Sikoa instead. And this caused Roman Reigns to become enraged, and he pie-faced Jimmy Uso, he pie-faced Jey Uso, and Jimmy came back with a super kick to Roman Reigns. And Jey was shocked. He's telling Jimmy, "What are you doing? You got to be better than that." And Jimmy said, "I'm just doing what you should have done a long time ago." And he gave him another super kick. He gave Roman another super kick. He said, "It's me and you now." He told his brother, "We the ones, not him. I'm your brother, not him. I would never do you like that. I would never treat you like that." And Jey was reluctant, but he left with his brother. And in the end, it was Solo Sikoa who took the pin. And KO and Sami retained the title. So the Bloodline is imploding. And they got a great camera shot on the floor of Roman Reigns. I think he was sitting up against the barricade, but it was from his perspective of him looking up at Sami Zayn, who was posing on the ropes with both of his tag team belts. It was such a great shot. So I thought that the angle itself was excellent. I thought the match was very good, and the angle that followed was tremendous storytelling. It was great. It was one of those great Bloodline moments on a list of great Bloodline moments. And now the question is, where do you go from here? Do you do Roman against Jimmy and Money in the Bank? I think it's more likely we get a tag team match. We can get Roman and Solo against the Usos at Money in the Bank, and they save whatever the title defense is going to be for SummerSlam. And I think that title defense may end up being a fatal four-way match. I think it may be a Bloodline four-way at SummerSlam with Roman, Solo, Jimmy, and Jey, with Roman's titles on the line. I think that to me would be the front runner right now for what I think the plan would be for SummerSlam. Because think about it, if they're not going right back to Roman and Cody, if they're going to hold off on that as long as they can, who are the likely challengers for Roman Reigns? Right? I mean, they're going to just build up AJ Styles, who just lost to Seth Rollins? Are they going to build up Bobby Lashley? I mean, they could. It would kind of seem forced at this point, because the story is the Bloodline. That's the story that Roman is actively involved in right now. The walls are starting to crumble down around him. So it would almost seem forced to put anybody else in there with him at this point. I think a fatal four-way is the match that makes the most sense. Meanwhile, you have the Usos' father and Solo's father. I guess they all share the same father. Rikishi. On Twitter, he posted these 3 tweets after the show. He said, "Enough, and so it shall be done." And finally, "Stay in your lane," with no context added to any of these. Now, he was going to be part of the Roman Reigns celebration at Raw 30, which got changed, if you remember, to the trial of Sami Zayn. They did the whole tribal council thing. So they never brought in Rikishi. They never brought in Alpha and Sika. like they had originally planned. So maybe we see Rikishi on SmackDown this Friday for the 1,000-day championship celebration they're doing with Roman Reigns.